Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. With every new league comes a Balance Manifesto, and this is a statement basically from GGG on what they feel is the most overperforming builds, some of the most underperforming skills, and as a little bit of a warm-up as to what's going to come in the patch notes tomorrow. So patch notes will be about 24 to 27 hours after you're seeing this video. Now, what the idea here is that where there's a mechanic, a player option that's so powerful that players feel compelled to use it, they generally tend to nerf it in order to make room for alternatives to shine. And likewise, where there's options that overperform at various parts of the game, those sections will take more targeted nerfs. So we'll see a bit of that, as well as that there's a number of buffs to really underutilized skills. So, firstly, there's a little bit of talk about the Ascendancies. So the Mistress of Sacrifice node on the Necromancer and also on the Ascendant is getting nerfed considerably. This is the one that allows offerings to apply to you. It's extremely powerful, and it's one of the reasons that a lot of players had been running Necromancers as generic spellcasters. The idea here, I think, is that if you are playing a generic spellcaster, you're probably going to want to go something else. That may be a Hierophant, it may be an Inquisitor, although Inquisitor has its own problems. It may be an Elementalist, which again is not in the best place, or more likely it's going to be an Assassin. The Assassin's taking some nerfs too, but it's going to survive them. So we've also lowered the critical strike chance and multiplier on the Assassin's Deadly Infusion, which is its best node. That's the one that provides you with critical strike modifiers based upon the number of power charges you have, and also the crit strike multi on the Assassin's small passives. And the idea here is that these two passives were making the classes too generically powerful for too many builds. I think this is the right decision. It means that now it's a genuine choice. If you're thinking of playing an elemental-based attack character, where previously it was essentially a no-brainer that you go Assassin and you go critical strikes, now you're probably still going to feel compelled to go critical strikes, but you might consider something like the Raider, which was not far behind in power level from the Assassin. Next up is a couple of the most powerful nodes on the passive tree. Glancing Blows is taking a considerable nerf. However, it's not the nerf that was leaked prior to the launch of the Heist League. It's a different nerf. So with Glancing Blows, this doubles your chance to block attacks and spells, but it halves the effect of you actually successfully blocking. So instead of taking 0 damage, you take 50%. Well, that's being changed. Now you're going to take 65% of damage from blocked hits. The idea here is that the Keystone was too good in conjunction with effects that recover life or energy shield on block, and that was providing too much survivability for too little investment. Now, the intention is that you can still do that, but it's not going to be overwhelmingly more powerful defensively than other options. Divine Flesh is only taking a meaningful but mild nerf. So Divine Flesh Keystone provided an extremely strong defensive layer against elemental and chaos damage, provided you could overcap your chaos resistance. Well, now Divine Flesh is being nerfed to a 5% maximum chaos resist instead of 10, which is still going to leave it pretty strong, but it's no longer going to be as easy to overcap your chaos resistance. So previously, if you wanted 90% chaos resistance, all you needed was Divine Flesh, Sapphire's Frame, and one other source of plus 1% maximum resistances. Now you'll need a bit more. You probably need to have cluster jewels with increased maximum chaos resistance on them. Enduring Cry, this is getting a cooldown of 8 seconds and is only going to generate endurance charges when you have at least one enemy around you. This is to prevent the putting of Enduring Cry on left click, which was just the most dominant way to play, like the most dominant way to replace your general movement. And I think it's generally a pretty sensible change. Ball Lightning. Ball Lightning combined with slower projectiles outclass the damage of other spells, so it's had its damage and its area lowered slightly. We really need to see hard numbers on this to know whether this is going to kill off various League Start builds that have been popular. Ball Lightning Mines has been a really strong build for a long time at League Start. This may or may not be the end of Ball Lightning Mines. I think it'll probably survive, but we'll have to see. Spellslinger is getting nerfed at low gem level. It seems like it'll still be fine at higher gem levels, but at low gem levels, Spellslinger is really taking a big hit. The idea here is that currently one of the most powerful ways to level a character is the Chaos Slinger archetype, which basically is an Essence Drain Contagion build that uses Spellslinger, and that is taking a considerable nerf here. We'll have to see how the Chaos Slinger works with these stats. I honestly do not know. Redemption Sentry Spectres are taking a significant nerf, and presumably that also means that Redemption Sentries that attack us are going to be weaker as well. Cluster Jewels, there are 3 specific nodes that are considered too strong that are being adjusted: Precise Commander, Vicious Bite, and Vengeful Commander. There's a few others that are being watched as well, but nothing's being changed. Vitality, Precision, and Clarity. So Vitality is being buffed on its own, but nerfed in conjunction with the Top Watcher's Eye mods, and Precision and Clarity's Top Watcher's Eyes are being nerfed. Vitality has always had a value that seemed low compared to the other value of other auras with similar mana reservations, meant that it's basically seen no use outside enabling of powerful Vitality-specific Watcher's Eye mods. We're changing the skill to have a flat mana reservation. So Vitality's cost is going to be like Clarity's, and it's going to gain flat life reservation instead of percent. So essentially, it's going to become a mirror of Clarity. Where Clarity reserves mana and recovers mana, this is going to reserve mana and recover life. It's now available early at level 10, and the attribute requirement's now consistent, requiring the primary attribute and 75% of the standard attribute requirements for skills. Various powerful Watcher's Eye mods for the auras that reserve a flat amount of mana, now this is Vitality, Precision, and Clarity, they've had their values lowered to match the low investment required to use those auras. So this means that essentially the various Watcher's Eyes that have previously been accessible in a league that make Clarity absurdly powerful, and Precision and Vitality, these are going to be a lot weaker in the future. It does mean if you're a standard player and you've got a lot of resources behind you, it might be the right decision to pick up any of those Watcher's Eyes that you want now, but if you're not a standard player, it's not going to matter. At the same time, we've changed a small number of other specific Watcher's Eye modifiers that were providing large values of recovery rate. More info on that in the patch notes tomorrow. Vile Impurity skills have been changed to grant maximum ally res instead of less damage taken, and this is to prevent standard players from abusing them to become completely invincible. Ailment Effect. We're changing some ailment modifying stats like Chill Effect, Shock Effect, Freeze Duration, and Chill Duration to instead apply to all cold and lightning ailments. This is intended to affect Sap and Brittle instead. Not particularly relevant to most players, but they are there as a build option. Projectile behavior ordering is a big one. Changing the orders that projectiles perform special behaviors so that splitting occurs first, followed by piercing, forking, chaining, then returning. So this means that effects that add pierces no longer completely brick various effects that provide projectile split. For specific mechanics that had a chances to occur or not occur, you'll now be able to fall back on another behavior the projectile has. Previously, if a projectile had a chain remaining, then the skill couldn't return until it had chained the last time, even if there were no enemies in range to chain to. Now the projectile will return and could still make use of the remaining chain if it hits an enemy during that return. So this is just generally an improvement to how projectiles work that will only come up at higher end gameplay. Reduced visibility and stealth. Sources of reduced visibility have been changed to stealth. Previously, reaching 100% reduced visibility made you unable to be detected by enemies, whereas now 100% stealth will halve the range monsters detect you at, 200% stealth will reduce it to 1/3 of their range, and so on and so forth. So this is something that most players will never encounter in their gameplay, but that for people who have been running a number of builds that were designed to become completely invincible, this is going to kill those tricks off. Changes to mods which provide flat life regen. These have been really powerful at low level and really awful at high level, and the values that provide flat life regen have been buffed considerably at high level. The intention is that it's to make these mods more competitive with percentage-based life regen at higher levels. To be honest, I'm not sold on this. I don't think that doubling them is enough. However, life regeneration mods also roll slightly less commonly on items. This will probably be a popular one. Changes to the mod tag system. Too much to go into here, except to say that if you ever made any mistakes in the Harvest League, like I did, where you thought that you could augment an attack mod on an item, except that and you played around with cannot roll caster mods, cannot roll attack mods, all sorts of things like that, and you got a counterintuitive result. The reason that you could get counterintuitive results is that what Harvest considered an attack mod was different to what the metacrafting on the crafting bench considered an attack mod. That's being standardized completely. So cannot roll attack mods will now pick from exactly the same, will now block exactly the same pool of mods that the old Harvest Craft add an attack mod would pick from. So that's being fixed, and there'll be some future uses for that undoubtedly. The key thing though is that this is going to influence the way that catalysts work, and will also make it much clearer what your expectations should be if you are using fossils to craft. So new tags have been added to support the merger. These are ailment, attribute, curse, damage, gem, and resistance. And additionally, there's going to be a few other little things like turbulent catalysts are being fixed up. Corroded and prismatic fossils now affect mods with the ailment, or with the physical and ailment, or chaos and ailment tags, rather than the bleeding and poison tags. Bleeding and poison tags are being removed. Faceted fossils now use the gem tag, which has been applied to all mods that directly affect gems, and the gem level tag is no longer used. This opens up new uses to faceted fossils with basically no impact on their current functions. Bound fossils now increase the likelihood of rolling curse mods, and prismatic fossils no longer separately affect the weightings of fire, cold, and lightning mods, as these mods are now also always tagged as elemental. The same is true for jagged fossils and bleeding mods, and aberrant fossils and poison mods. These aren't functional changes, but will make things clearer to understand. And yeah, the cannot roll attack mods and cannot roll caster mods and metacrafts now behave exactly as expected. Finally, the rationale used to tag mods has been simplified, and all existing mod tags reviewed for consistency in order to allow players to reasonably infer what tags a mod may have without even viewing them directly. In summary, tags are now only added to mods which specifically and directly affect the subject of the tag. Some of the implications of this include conditional mods do not receive tags based on the condition. For instance, a mod that grants damage while on full life does not receive the life tag. And this is interesting because that was one of the mods that used to be able to roll specifically on weapons in conjunction with prismatic fossils. Sorry, not pristine fossils, the life fossils. And a mod that grants attack speed if you've dealt a critical strike recently does not receive the critical tag. And so obviously that means that Tailwind is looking like it's no longer going to have the crit tag. A mod that grants a power charge on critical strike would receive the crit tag because that is directly modifying the effect of crits. Any tag that is necessarily a subset of another tag receives both tags. So currently this means that fire, cold, and lightning tags are all elemental mods. This isn't a functional change to prismatic fossils. As mentioned above, they used to also apply to fire, cold, and lightning modifiers without explicitly describing this. A related concept of this is that all bleed-related mods now receive the attack tag as well as physical and ailment tag, because bleed can still only be applied by attacks. Mods granting skills or keyworded buffs do not grant tags matching the stats of those skills or buffs. Previously it was very inconsistent whether these tags were granted, but a more minimalist approach was chosen in order to prevent many mods which grant buffs from requiring enormous numbers of tags. Mods granting notable or keystone passives do grant tags, matching the stats of those passive skills. While this is inconsistent with our approach to buffs and skills, it was judged necessary for the sake of cluster jewels. So one of the key things here is that you can still target specific cluster jewels reasonably effectively with fossils. Thousands of individual tags have been made to mod tags. Sorry, thousands of changes have been made to mod tags. So to understand with the implications for item crafting, we've prepared a full list of the mods which you can roll on items and their new tags. And it must be stressed that most crafting methods are not significantly affected by these changes, but specific methods for crafting items with certain combinations of mods may be affected. and you'll undoubtedly be able to generate some new some new shenanigans as well with a little investigation. So this gives a bit of a sense. Like there's a huge list here. This goes for pages and pages and pages and pages and pages and pages. Like really, that is a lot of pages. Let's just, yeah, that is a very large amount there. This is a list of everything that can roll. Ideally, this will be made available as some sort of searchable spreadsheet as well. I'm not aware if that's been done yet, but that is a genuinely useful resource. Currently, POEDB is where people get that. That's a data mining website. It'll be good to have something more official. So, in terms of my overall thoughts, I think that the reduction in power level of the Necromancer and the Assassin is going to be good for build variety. This is going to mean that there's just simply more options that are viable, because the nerfed Assassin will still be fine, unless they were to absolutely remove entirely the Deadly Infusion mod, completely remove all the crit multi from the Assassin tree. Assassin was in such a good position that it would still be fine, but with a few nerfs, then things like Raider can start becoming competitive for a elemental attack build, and for elemental spellcaster builds. Like I said, I kind of want to see Elementalists get a bit better for that niche, but Hierophant is still fine as well. Hierophant's fine. Elementalist isn't too bad. It does have some strong synergies with some skills, and so it's got its uses. And also you can play as Scion Ascendant as well. Anyway, that's all I've got on the Balance Manifesto. This is going to give us some information on what's coming with the patch notes tomorrow, which will be the single biggest piece of news for the entire league.